Welcome to the World United.
Welcome to the World United.
Our next speaker is Benjamin King. And Benjamin is the founder of Blue Petal Foundation. Oh, wow. I want to know what that is because I don't know what it is right now. So he's going to speak about return to the way of all life for healing, wholeness, and harmony. Nice alliteration there, Benjamin. So go for it. Tell us what the Blue Petal Foundation is and how you use that. Or how do you find it?
I would say Blue Petal Foundation is an organizational expression of what I am trying to be in this world and in my life. So the petal is a reference to the blue lotus flower, which is a sacred flower among a lot of Eastern religions and ancient traditions. It's a flower that represents spiritual victory, transformation, and healing. And so the nature of the work that we do and the message that we teach reflects this, not only for the individual, but for all manifestations of life. Healing and wholeness and harmony in our relationships, in our communities, in our organizations, in our society, and in our world. So, but in terms of health and finding the healing and the transformation and the harmony in our own body and in our own mind and in our own heart, this idea of returning to the way of all life, that's what I'm excited to talk about this morning. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to be here and to do this. So I know that sounds inspiring, return to the way of all life, but what does it really mean? And how do I experience this in myself? So I'd like to tell a story and share a personal experience. What I didn't include in my bio was the fact that my background is the performing arts, and I have a whole decade and a half of training and experience of traveling all over this country, and as an actor, as a dancer, and as a performer. And I would say that was my first mind-body practice. Well, my first experience of auditioning for a show, I was 14 years old. I was barely beginning high school, but I was auditioning for a college Shakespeare production. So I was way out of my league, but I wanted to do this. And I was driven, and I came as prepared as I could, and I stood before the director and all of the other actors and actresses who were auditioning for the show. And I was so nervous. I was rigid, and everything I was trying to do to be natural was coming out as mechanical and rigid. And I was in what we call the sympathetic nervous system. And I got 20 seconds into this monologue before I felt like my brain shut down. And the director lovingly asked me if I wanted to start over again, which I did, and finished and sat down and was surprised how much of an exercise comes through a 1-minute monologue audition. But I was exhausted, and it was nearly 10 years later that I was back on that campus and in that same theater and auditioning for a different show with a different director. But this was a totally different experience. The director invited me to come and audition for the show, but I didn't have time for it. I couldn't fit it into my calendar, and I really didn't have interest to do it. Solely for the sake of doing him a favor, I auditioned. When I participated in this, I was calm, I was open, I was present, and there was a natural flow that was streaming through me. I had absolutely no fixed expectations on anything. I didn't want to be in the show. I had no desire that drove me to be in it. So I was able to simply just be present for the experience. And I was making choices as an actor that was not pre-planned. It was spontaneous. And it felt like what every actor strives to have when in a production, in that moment on stage or in that moment in film, where you are truly just yourself. Even though you're portraying a character, you are present. You're not acting. It's not acting at all. It's being emotionally connected to the moment and to others who are sharing the moment with you. It was the best and most successful experience I ever had in an audition. And I remember the director coming up to me afterward and shaking his fist at me saying, "I want you to be in this show." Well, I reflected on that many times since then. And I have seen how that plays out in my life. I've seen how that plays out in the lives of my clients and my students and people I see in the world that go through the experience that I had first, where everything was so tight and everything was so fixed, and then the stress and the anxiety that happens as a result, and what it does to any stream of consciousness, what that does to any sense of harmony, internally, and connection and creativity. All of it seems to clam up and shut, and we can get stuck in certain fixed patterns. And that affects all levels of the being. Whereas the opposite, where I was able to completely suspend any kind of fixed expectation on a result or an outcome, I was present. I was actually in a creative and playful joy. So what if this was more of my day-to-day experience and I could live with wonder and amazement? I'd like to show you a picture that I learned from my training in Chinese energetic medicine and in the practice of what is called Qigong. This is a character that when I say the way, return to the way of all life, of course, I am referencing a certain philosophy that has its history in China thousands of years ago. That is called Taoism. And so this is the ideogram or the character for Tao. And there's a lot of ways of interpreting this. And I'm going to share my favorite one. This box represents the self. And the three lines within the self are the three aspects of the being. So this is you, and this is your body, your mind, and your spirit. So this connotes a certain alignment. And when you find this alignment within yourself, then you can create a balance. And this balance, see, this is a little lever with yin and yang. There are aspects of yin and yang in all reality. All manifestations have a complementary natural opposite to it. And this is what we discover of, in this reality of duality. We are spirit beings. We're also temporal physical beings, and we're learning to live in the balance, in the harmony of both. There's a spiritual world, spirit world, and a physical world. And discovering truth helps us realize the reality of both. When we have this balance of yin-yang, then we become illuminated. This is kind of like a candle, and the path is open before us. So this little brushstroke here denotes movement. It's dynamic. So you can look at this as maybe a formula if you want, but it's how I can gauge and experience the way within me, the return to the way of all life. When I find a balance and I can come into greater awareness of my physical body, which surprisingly a lot of us disconnect from. And that is usually the result of experiencing trauma, is that we have a consciousness disconnect from the body, or a lack of awareness of our spirit self, the part of us that actually is eternal in nature. But when we find that alignment, we can understand this balance of duality and walk along the path of life that is there for us. And that's when we discover that life actually has a flow to it. We realize that it's like we're being carried by a current, and we don't have to fight against it. We're able to let go of certain controls of life and trust that there's a natural unfolding, and things work out a lot better than we would anticipate. So how, again, let me tie it back to the title of this presentation. What does the way of all life have to do with healing and wholeness and harmony? Well, as you know, there is a connection of all three aspects of the being. There is a significant difference between the way Western medicine and Eastern medicine view the body. Both of them are marvelous perspectives, but they're just different. Western medicine will view the body as if it were a machine. So it's this grand composite of a bunch of moving parts and pieces, and it's really important that each part performs its function. And because if something stops, it causes a problem in other areas. And like the engine of a car, we can stop it, we can pop the hood, and we can take a look at what's faulty and replace it if we need to. Now that's miraculous, and that's wonderful. Thank goodness for that perspective and that approach. However, it's limiting in a way that the Eastern, which is more holistic, can help give a more comprehensive understanding. The way that Eastern medicine, especially Chinese energetic medicine, views the body as a garden. And so a doctor of Chinese energetic medicine is a gardener. It's all about cultivating life. Western medicine will look at eradicating symptoms and preventing death. Eastern medicine is about cultivating life and having abundance of it, so that we are experiencing this connection within ourselves that we could describe as a source of that flow with happiness, inner peace, contentment, meaningful connection to purpose. So we want to make sure that the soil is rich. We want to make sure that there's a healthy exposure of sunlight. We want to make sure that the water is flowing. All of this is an ecosystem and a balance and a harmony. And the saying goes like this: if the spirit is aggravated, the heart will waver. If the heart wavers, the body will be injured. If the spirit is at peace, the heart will be in harmony. And if the heart is in harmony, the body will be whole. It's all interconnected. And this is how we can just start with just the awareness of how to create this alignment within ourselves. Now, there is a workshop that I'll be teaching much later this afternoon of showing some of these basic movements and breathing techniques and how we can train our consciousness using our imagination in order to integrate body, mind, spirit together. And that's how we cultivate our garden. And that's how we can come into the parasympathetic state of rest and digest and relaxation, and all of our natural occurring inner resources can increase in vitality. And we can be in that state that I was describing before, where I didn't have fixed expectations. I can be in that state of faith and trust and recognize that I am part of something greater and grander that is working its way out in beautiful manifestations. So I'd like to just pose a few questions that you can ask yourself in order to assess how do I recognize if I am in the way? How do I know if I'm returning to the way of all life? So the questions I would ask are, if you were to close your eyes right now and just take in a deep breath and let it out and go inward, where do you feel any stiffness in your body? Do you recognize any area that feels painful or tense or tight? Most people tend to carry their stress in their neck, their shoulders, or their back. Is the stiffness of the body correlating to any stiffness of the mind? Are there any stiff thoughts? Is there a need to control? What am I controlling right now? What am I trying not to control right now? What do I believe I have to control and can't afford not to? How well do I breathe on a regular basis? How do I breathe when I drive? How do I breathe when I have a conversation with my boss or my significant other or my children? These are all things that you can use to gauge awareness of where you're recognizing a harmony or disharmony between the body, your mind, and your spirit. Going back to my experience and recognizing that when I find this alignment and how it creates a balance for me so that I can dwell in the present and allow myself to enjoy being in joy with the wonder and amazement, I recognize that there is no way to happiness, but happiness is the way. There is no way to love. Love is the way. There is no way to peace. Peace is the way. None of these are destinations, but they're here and now that we can experience. So the way of all life is best understood when it's embodied. And I can do that through the simple practice of what I practice and what I'll be teaching later in the workshop as Qi Gong. But with that, I thank you for your time. I thank you for watching, and I thank you for being here, showing that you have a desire in helping the global consciousness to not only come together, but to increase and to raise up higher. Because we all know that there is a greater experience that we can all collectively come together in through this. So with that, thank you.
Benjamin, thank you so very much. That was absolutely amazing. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, where am I feeling tension in my body? Well, I have a role to play here today, and which means there's certain things I need to be focusing on and paying attention to. So it's, how do we balance the inner beingness with in this, what appears to be a physical world? How do we balance that inner joy or being here now with the physical tasks or roles that we've been given? I mean, Shakespeare says, or no, it wasn't, but one of Shakespeare's players, I forget which one, said, all the world's a stage and the people are the players they're on. They have their entrances and their exits. And, each one plays his part. So anyway, thank you very much.